All right, here we go. So we want to just give a brief update from the executive council meeting. We had really no new budget information from this quarter to share. Everything's moving along fairly stable. We did receive a $50,000 grant from Nicor Gas in 2021, which we're going to be using, and I'll let Jim talk about that.
Yeah. So I finally cracked that a little bit extra money, and it was just sort of a serendipitous kind of opportunity. But basically, late last year, I was able to secure $50,000. We sort of earmarked it a little bit as to what it was going to be allocated towards. Part of it is allocated to sort of help engage diverse partners and in diverse voices, and that really kind of speaks to the Congress and helping Congress and get extra people to Congress, different kinds of people to Congress, voices, that sort of thing. There's a portion of money that's allocated for kind of a direct line of sight to our goal of trying to restore, maintain, create 10,000 acres of green space. And so that can be dovetailed in with maybe the work we're doing with our other grant from IDNR, planting trees or other kinds of green activities. And that's yet to kind of be really framed out. Then the third piece, I think, well, actually there were 4 pieces, right? There's a third piece that was kind of working with the Field Museum to create
Discovery
boxes in sort of the Calumet region. This would be sort of an education box that would be used at schools where people can check them out and you can kind of learn about the unique environment of the Calumet region and sort of help educators and homeschool classes or whomever else might want to do that. So they're partnering with us to help develop that, roll that out sometime this fall. And then there was a fourth.
The hub.
Oh, the hub, yeah. Supporting the hub. And so that was basically helping provide some funding for some of the grunt, I don't want to say grunt work, but some of the actual intern work, right? To get some of the mapping done and getting a mapping in place and helping provide a little bit of oomph behind some of the effort of the mapping team and the hub. So that was all in that $50,000 grant from last year. This coming year, this year, as a matter of fact,
Right.
Laura and I tomorrow are going to pound this thing up, but we're going to submit our application for an additional grant for 2022, and that would be in the amount of $20,000. And we're basically looking to probably have that focused around the efforts of our goals teams and the work that we're doing with the goals to try and achieve the, some of the goals of the overall Chicago Wilderness effort with, restoring green space. We got all those acreage goals that we got for all the different teams. So trying to tap into that and provide some funding to help continue carrying that. So those are 2 great examples of something that just kind of happened to manifest. The good thing about the next grant is that it's going to be kind of like a 2-year thing. So I'm trying to extend it so it's not just every other year or every year, trying to bring some longevity to that. So that's some exciting new things that are coming up.
And it will also support some of the work around Congress.
Definitely.
Hopefully content planning.
Voices and that sort of thing. Yeah. It's pretty flexible. I try to leave us some breathing room so we can kind of make it work. And this is the first time Nicor is really kind of approaching things this way. So we're going to learn. We're going to learn how to work together with Chicago Wilderness. Hopefully, find it to be a great partnership and have some longevity with that.
Thank you so much, leadership. We did welcome 2 new partners, A3 Environmental Consultants and the Friends of the Illinois Nature Preserves at the April meeting. So we were happy to welcome them. And we did share an update on Congress, and Congress will be Thursday, November 3rd at UIC. And it's going to be a half-day event this time. We're going to start at 1 o'clock. In the past, we've had a lot of breakout rooms, but we've heard feedback from all of our members that said, we don't want to pick a breakout room stream. We feel like then we miss kind of being together. And right now, given COVID and everything, we haven't been together to sort of hear what's, learn from each other, network. And the intention will be to sort of structure it around some presentations, a keynote, a panel, all in the main forum at UIC. And then at the end, we'll have a reception from about 5 to 6:30, but it's not an 8 to 6:30 event anymore. It gives us a little more flexibility. We're doing the catering in-house, just in case COVID rears its head, we will be able to pivot more quickly. And if so, we still are thinking that we will do a more high quality version of a hybrid, but we would be able to stream it, at least stream the higher level, the keynote and the presentations, and maybe create some videos in advance to really feature the work, so that one, that's something that we can use to enhance our website and some of our materials, but also just in case something changes, we won't be caught in the same situation that we were 2 years ago with canceling and eliminating Congress. Now, that being said, we still really want to engage our younger audiences, our younger staff, and that's really going to be in similar focus, even though we no longer have the student and emerging professionals group. It is, but we hope that maybe through the Congress planning process, that this is a really good opportunity to re-engage that. And obviously with new leaders, because as we know, a lot of the folks that were really the energetic force behind that, like everywhere, moved on to new positions. And, this is the opportunity to get new leaders. And I think it's really valuable. I think it's what we all want to do, and go deeper and broader within our own partner organizations to bring up that next generation of staff and engage them in a way that, hi, thank you. Welcome.
Hi, John.
Good. We're just sort of just giving an overview, but feel free to
You're
grab
live
a,
online.
yeah, you're live online. Yeah.
You're documented.
So we are looking for volunteers for the planning committee. So if you have folks, yes, I'm tapping you in, and maybe we'll put you right on the back to the emerging professionals. I think that would be great.
That's a great group.
Yeah. We'd like to get that going. So thanks, Jared. I wanted to mention this. This is actually something that the agriculture committee, the Growing with Agriculture team, has been working on. It's a field days in Will County. And it's really exciting. It's going to be a full day tour where they're going to feature sustainable agricultural practices that are going on in Will County. And they'll have a bus tour. It's 8 to 4, and it will go to, I think it's 4 different sites and 4 different family farms and farms to really feature the work that's happening there, as well as some of the work that's going on in Will County. So there's information about this on our website, and it probably has come out in the newsletter, but I really encourage you to check it out and join us if you can for that day. 30 by 30 has been getting a lot of attention, and I know that it's a big deal, not only in Illinois, but also throughout the Chicago Wilderness region. And we were fortunate to be able to present to IDNR what the Chicago Wilderness Green Vision is and how that ties into Chicago, to the 30 by 30 goals for the region. And there have been listening sessions that Open Lands, the Illinois Environmental Council, and others have been leading to do listening, because as we imagine 30 by 30, we know that we're not going to get to the 30 by 30 goals by looking at it the same way as we've done in the past. There isn't the ability to do land acquisition to meet those 30 by 30 goals, but by looking at particularly conservation areas and parks and additional other types of land types, we would be able to get there. Agriculture is a big part of this, and we were able to look at, through the mapping and the hub and the work that Dave Holman is doing, to identify, so really the number that we're looking at is this. But if we expand that to all land types, if we include things like greenways, we include the parks and the conservation areas, we include agriculture, we really cut that down to about 55,000 acres. And that is a much more realistic goal than where we were at just looking at land acquisition and our status of protected lands alone. And so this is a really exciting change. And I think that the work that we're doing here with goal 3, with prioritizing green infrastructure, if we were to really be able to capture what we're doing with native plantings on campuses, on municipalities, on watersheds, on rights of way, and we're going to hear more about the rights of way plan in a minute from Caroline and Iris, gardens and green roofs, we are really getting much closer, both across the region, but particularly in Illinois alone. This is where we have got the most research and the most data that that there is really a potential. We're not that far off. And I think that what we're really focusing is how can we track this and how can the hub be integrated to support this work. There were some recommendations that were submitted. And this is a list of those to read them.
Are these DNR recommendations? Or
These are
Wilderness?
Chicago Wilderness recommendations to DNR that was submitted on behalf of Chicago Wilderness. And I can share with you, I can't drop the link in here now. I will share with you all in the outreach the actual letter that went out to IDNR. But particularly for the work that we're doing, you can see the oak ecosystem recovery, the prioritization of wetland conservation strategy, and nature-based solutions. Like, this is really the work that we are doing. And I think that there's funding, as you know, that the funding will be coming down from federal government for 30 by 30. And so what we want to be able to do is really position some projects across the region. And in fact, there was a watershed grant that was just applied for through Representative Underwood's office. And I was hoping that Jeff would be here today, Jeff Mengler, because he was very involved with brokering that and Hackmatack. And I think that, again, it's just an example of the partnership aspect at work to make this happen. So Caroline, I hope that you are still with us. And I know Iris may have had to log off, but I want to turn it over to you for, as you know, we have the sub goals. We have rights of ways, we have tree canopy and green infrastructure on campuses and urban areas. But the one that you've been, I'm just going to introduce Caroline Hernandez from UIC, who's been working with Sarah on the Growing Chicago initiative through a grant from the Donnelly Foundation. So thank you for joining us.
And Lauren, can I just ask you a clarifying
Yeah.
question before we dive in? So that 30 by 30 effort, the 55,000 acres, that's just in Illinois, right?
That's
IDNR sort of
yes,
thing,
yes,
state.
that was just in
Okay.
Illinois.
So that million would be like the whole,
Yes,
like that would be the whole
whole Chicago
Wilderness
region.
But we're sort of lasered into the 55.
we are, but we're also, and that's what I was just talking to Keith about. We reached out to Indiana. Victoria Wittig, who's also on the steering committee, met with Deb Moskowitz, who is sort of working on this initiative for Illinois. We're working to try to create those similar partnerships, and not even part, we already have partnerships, but really engage, because they don't have the same, not all efforts in the other states. Like Indiana doesn't have a state-led coalition like IDNR is leading on 30 by 30 in Indiana. And so by using the Chicago Wilderness model of what we just created here for Illinois and submitted to IDNR, we're trying to replicate that effort across Indiana and Wisconsin and hopefully Michigan. We have even fewer partners in Michigan and a smaller range at this time. But again, if we have this model that we've created now for Illinois, we'd like to extrapolate that to Wisconsin and Indiana. And even though our territory and our region is the Chicago Wilderness region, just like this, we're still part of the statewide effort. So it doesn't just limit it to that region.
Question about the infrastructure bill funding. Most of that gets fund flows to the state, and the state divvies it up to different groups, and then people apply for that. The Chicago Wilderness, is there an opportunity to actually get funding from some source within the state to be able to fund projects that are part of our?
Yeah, so part of that America the Beautiful funding, we would hope that there would be the opportunity. And I think like some of the work that we want to do is identify what are those projects that would be ready to go, that we have partners kind of working on and collaborating through the region, and hopefully.
So it's a grant writing type of thing? Right.
Yeah, so it could be, but I mean, it's also like kind of compiling some of the work through like what we're doing with this Green Vision goals. And I think it's why some of the work with the goals is so important right now is what are the priority projects that can come out of each of the teams?
So
You know.
kind of the old term from years ago, shovel ready. stuff
Shovel
that's
ready.
Ready to go,
Yes,
not to be studied for 4 years.
Right.
They want to.
right, and
That's the key, Jerry, with these goal groups, you know, as we really get them structured, get them ready, get them organized, then that can kind of dovetail in with the opportunity that the American People 30 by 30 effort sort of bring up. And then working with IDNR, obviously IDNR with John Rogner and the gang, you know, they know us. John, right?
Yeah.
And so there's no promise, but there's lots of opportunity here, I think, as we are creating this template, not only to conduct the work that we know we need to do, but like you said, you know, how can this model can be replicated?
We had conversations with state resources to say, how are you, what do we need to provide you to apply for?
yeah, so once the recommendations were submitted to IDNR, Debbie just recently, and this is just in the last week, sent a message to John and Elizabeth and included me to say like, okay, now what do we need to do?
Right.
So,
Conversations.
Yes, yes.
Because it's already half a year into the 5 year.
right. And like I said, that's why, like, you know, there are examples. Some of the goal teams are in different places with their prioritization and their work. And so some of them have identified what their priorities are, and others are still working on it. And obviously ours is still working on it. But I think that let's turn this over to Caroline. She can talk about what's going on with Rights of Ways, because I think like hers feeds directly into this as well, because you've already identified your audience and your project scope. So thanks, Caroline.
Yeah, hi everyone. Sorry I couldn't join you all in person. Maybe for the next one, I can be there. But so just to give you all some context before I dive into what the Growing Chicago Habitat Initiative is all about. Last year, UIC received a grant from the Donnelly Foundation to look at potential opportunities, barriers, and incentives to supporting the creation and conservation of habitat on energy and transportation working landscapes. And so we, through a number of meetings and surveys, we convened the energy and transportation organizations throughout the Chicago Wilderness region, and had these discussions on, you know, what does your habitat activities look like now? What would you need in the future to be able to do more habitat activities? And then we also convened conservation organizations and public and private landowners. And we had similar conversations. You know, are you working with any energy or transportation organizations right now to create and conserve habitat? What aspects can you, or what tools and resources can you provide to these energy and transportation organizations so they can, start managing their rights of way in a pollinator friendly method. And we heard just overall a really positive response. The energy and transportation organizations were really interested in increasing their conservation goals and their and also in increasing their collaborations with these conservation organizations and public and private landowners, especially because these rights of way are passing a lot of public and private, or they're on public and private land, and so there's a lot of opportunities to collaborate. And so what we did was we applied for another grant through the Donnelly Foundation to kick off this Growing Chicago Habitat Initiative. And obviously, while we were doing all of this work, we were engaging Chicago Wilderness, and we were, and you can't help but see all of the overlap of intention trying to just create more habitat throughout the Chicago Wilderness area. And so we've been working with Laura and with Sarah to create this initiative for the next 2 years, where we're hoping to really dial down and get these players that we engaged last year and any new additional organizations that want to collaborate in the future all together, and essentially just establish a network where we can all get in one place and talk about current habitat projects, talk about initiatives that we're hoping to collaborate on in the future, what we need, what we can provide each other, success stories, barriers, things like that. And then through this network, create this platform where we can continue having these conversations online, even if we're not at an in-person meeting, finding a way that we can share contacts. We heard from conservation organizations, yeah, we want to work with utilities, we just never know who to contact and we never know what they're working on. And so having a contact list, having like a message board, an initiative tracker, all of this to start building those relationships. So even after this project finishes, it's sustainable and it's going to keep going, whether UIC and Chicago Wilderness is really heavily involved or not. And the third goal of of Growing Chicago is creating a prioritization strategy. And this also goes into the sustainability of the initiative. By having a prioritization strategy where we can get everybody that is collaborating on these conservation efforts to focus on a specific area of the Chicago Wilderness and work together to create these like habitat zones, then we can start taking into account other aspects that we really want to focus on. Environmental justice has become kind of a hot button issue, or we know that there are other habitat zones nearby. If we focus our efforts close by, then we can create these comprehensive stepping stones for creatures, and then there won't be this desert of nectar resources. So we hosted our first kickoff meeting about a month and a half ago, I think, and it was a huge success. We had some incredible players, and now we are starting to go into this prioritization strategy. Thank you, Laura. We can sit here. So the idea is, and Laura touched on this, and obviously this is what the goal 3 is focusing on, but this built infrastructure, there is so much opportunity when we think about roadways and roadsides, when we think about under transmission lines or over pipelines or along railroads. And this map on the right hand side is showing just where those energy and transportation rights of way are across the Chicago Wilderness. And it's huge, it's a ton of land. And on the left hand side are the public and private open spaces. And obviously there's going to be overlap. And so how can we use these overlapping lands to really start working together, prioritizing areas that we want to start these initiatives and start creating and conserving habitat at a more collaborative way. And so I think this is just a really neat way to illustrate how much opportunity there is out there just with energy and transportation organizations to contribute to creating habitat. And then also, you know, all of the opportunities for collaborative efforts between these public and private landowners and then conservation organizations as well. Okay, next slide, please. And just, I like this, and this was created by Friends of the Chicago River, but I like these two illustrations because I think they do a really nice job of just showing the opportunities that energy and transportation rights of way can provide. So you have on the right-hand side, you've got this energy company, let's say, and they've got the opportunities for a green roof and creating pollinator habitat there. They've got some fallow land that they own, and then the utility corridor. And these organizations are managing these lands to prevent, you know, woodies and trees from growing because they can't have them growing into the utility lines. But this is creating an opportunity for early successional habitat, nectar resources, and native plants. And then you have even more opportunities on the other side. You've got those parks and public and private lands. And so these rights of way are crisscrossing all of these types of lands. And when they're managed in a way that promotes habitat, they can be these long linear transects just connecting these really important habitat areas. And the left-hand side is just that it's a similar story where you're seeing these habitat hubs, and when managed for habitat, these linear corridors, these little pollinator highways, they could be just connecting everything from, and what could be kind of a barren area or that nectar desert, you know, if you're crisscrossing a large city or an agricultural land, these corridors provide a lot of opportunities. Okay, next slide, please. So as we're moving into the summer, I said that we had our kickoff meeting, and we're planning on having two meetings of the full Growing Chicago initiative group together, so we can all get together, share a case study. So ComEd, Sarah shared a case study of how they're tracking their habitat, and they're doing these test plots and looking at their vegetation management and making changes according to the tracking. So we've got those two, but this summer we're really hoping to focus on our prioritization strategy. And that's where we are going to start identifying these areas for habitat on rights of way, you know, collaborating with these conservation organizations throughout Chicago, and then figuring out ways to support the rights of way organizations in creating this habitat, and thinking about like logistical planning, you know, what makes sense in terms of their current vegetation management practices, and start using that for some of that prioritization. It's also important to just know where these rights of way are, and you know, how often do they intersect with public and private lands? How often do they intersect with these habitat hubs? And so we're working with our energy and transportation organizations to start figuring out, you know, is there existing mapping and existing data that we can start utilizing? Do we need to start getting some of that data collected, and can we start layering it onto each other? And then we can, once we have all of the right of way data, we can start identifying some of those opportunities for habitat, and then engaging the specific public or private landowner and conservation organization that would work in that area to say, okay, we're ready to collaborate on these projects. Next slide. Yep. And we're starting to do this. So UIC hosts the Rights of Ways Habitat Working Group, and through the Rights of Ways Habitat Working Group, which is a national organization, we have this geospatial habitat database, and that is primarily, or it's specifically for energy and transportation organizations to be able to track their habitat initiatives. They can track their vegetation management throughout their rights of way, and then they can use a pollinator scorecard to look at the quality of their habitat and keep track of that all of there. We're working with Field Museum and Chicago Wilderness to take that data and automatically input the non-sensitive data into the Chicago Wilderness Hub. So we can start tracking, okay, if ComEd's got this habitat area here, how do we put that into the Chicago Wilderness Hub? And then how can we start quantifying that towards these goals of, you know, they've created this incredible habitat, everyone should be getting credit for that. So obviously Chicago Wilderness has the hub, the Rights of Ways Habitat database has the geospatial database. And we know that there are a number of other organizations out there that are doing additional tracking and monitoring efforts. So Friends of the Chicago Wilderness along the river running through Chicago, it's got its own habitat hotspot database where it's tracking, you know, what areas are important to protect. And so taking those layers and just layering them all on top of each other to help us form this prioritization strategy. I'm trying to remember if I had another slide or not, Laura, do you remember?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent, okay. So this is essentially covering what I talked about, but you know, once we have that data from the energy and transportation organizations, and specifically in the Chicago Wilderness area, it can go towards this overall tracking and overall goal meeting for the Chicago Wilderness Hub, and really get a better idea of where there's habitat, where we can start prioritizing future habitat projects. And you know, into the future, we're hoping that this is okay. Next year, we're going to prioritize this area. You know, the year after that, the year after that, and so we can all collectively work on supporting energy and transportation organizations in the creation and conservation of habitat on their working landscapes. So
Thank you so much, Caroline. Does anyone have questions? Yeah. Sure. This is Kathy.
I mean, I think this is a great idea. My huge concern is, and I'm sure at some point this will be addressed, and I'd love to be a part of this conversation. Is it growing?
Growing Chicago.
All these rights of ways are so heavily invested with invasives. And I mean, to me, the worst invasives in the planet on these rights. How? I mean, and it's not just, you can't just kill it all, replant it, and think that there's not going to be forever maintenance on this. I mean, I see over and over again areas being, you know, restored or being totally restored. And within a short amount of time, if there's no follow-up, it's gone within a couple of years. But all of these rights, I just think of